Welcome to Land of the Bible. I'm your host, David Sussman. Today, we will turn our attention to one of the most dramatic and stirring locations in all of Israel, the ancient city of Gamla, known as the Masada of the North. Nestled deep within the Golan Heights, Gamla rises along a steep ridge that resembles the hump of a camel. Surrounded by sharp cliffs and deep valleys, the city's natural defenses made it a perfect place for a stronghold, and tragically, in the end, for a final stand. Geographically, Gamla is just a few miles east of the Sea of Galilee, but it feels worlds away. Remote, wild, and rugged, the site overlooks the Daliot River Canyon, offering sweeping views of the lower Golan. It's a place of stark beauty and haunting silence, where stone ruins and open skies carry echoes of ancient heroism. Today, the ruins of Gamla are quiet and have been established as a national park. You can walk along its winding paths, touch the stones of one of the oldest known synagogues, and gaze out over the valley that once echoed with the clash of empires. Griffin vultures circle above and nest in the trees that dot the slopes, and wildflowers bloom around the ruins of this Second Temple period Jewish city, offering a stark contrast to the tragedy that unfolded here. This is not just a story of destruction, it's a story of faith, resilience, and the will to remain a people in their land. Welcome to the Golan Heights and the city of Gamla, an ancient Second Temple period Jewish city located right here in the center of the Golan. Who built this city fortress? None other than the Hashmoneans from the story of Hanukkah. The Hashmonean dynasty will begin in roughly the year 167 BCE. But in order to understand them, we need to take a step back another 150 years to the time period of Alexander the Great, the Greek warrior king who conquered this entire region. He'll die at the age of 32 in a battle in Egypt, and his massive empire will break up into various kingdoms. To the north of Israel, you had the Seleucids, and to the south, the Ptolemies. The Ptolemies and the Seleucids will go to battle several times. The first one in roughly 300 BCEs, the Ptolemies in the Battle of Ipsus will come out on top and rule the land of Israel for the next 100 years. And even though they tax the Jews here heavily, they still give them a good amount of autonomy. But when the Seleucids will defeat the Ptolemies and take over the land of Judea, not only will they take away our autonomy, tax us even heavier, they'll begin to prevent us from circumcision and other Jewish customs. And this was too much for most of us to handle. A family of priests fed up with this Greek oppression will rise up and attack the Greeks, and this will be the beginning of the Jewish-Greek War. that will eventually end in the defeat of the Greeks, the Jews regaining control of Jerusalem, rededicating the temple, and this will mark the beginning of the Hashmonean period. Fast forward, not satisfied being the high priest alone, they'll anoint themselves as kings over Israel. And at the same time, with all of the wealth of victory over the Greeks, building up the army, they'll expand their borders. They'll regain control of all of Judea and Samaria. But not only that, they'll conquer the Golan Heights, a position that protects the valley down below, from the Sea of Galilee all the way up through the Hula Valley and onwards towards Lebanon. This area will be crucial for the survival of Jerusalem. And within the Golan Heights, they needed to establish city fortresses, and there was no other location better than Gamla. So join me as we hike down in order to see some of the wondrous ruins that are on the other side of those walls here in the city of Gamla. You know, the National Park Services here in Israel do an exceptional job making as much of it accessible to those who are handicapped, or those that don't want to hike a half hour down and maybe even an hour back to the top from Gamla. So they provided these awesome shaded areas that overlook onto the ancient ruins of Gamla. And they even provide an audio box that'll tell you a little bit about the history here. So even if you're traveling alone, you're not on a group tour, Gamla's the perfect place to come visit in order to enjoy the beautiful, pristine nature and learn a little about our shared history. This has been an absolutely amazing hike. We've gone about 15 minutes so far. We're about halfway down. We have a clear shot of the ancient city walls. You can just imagine the Romans coming down here in the year 66, 67 CE, the Common Era. They attacked both from the center of the wall and also up on high. But this is amazing here, especially in the springtime when all this is in bloom. We're just entering the rainy season. It's already starting to turn green, some wildflowers. Yeah, let's keep on hiking. This is getting exciting. We're about to go into Gamla.
Imagine walking where Jesus walked, where faith comes to life. Feel the Bible story unfold around you, from the green Galilee to Jerusalem's ancient streets. Experience the serene and welcoming land of the Bible, where miracles happen. Put your heart where His footsteps are. Visit Israel.
There are two entrances to the ancient part of Gamla here for tourists. The upper gate and the lower gate. We're now coming in the lower section, which is going to bring us into the synagogue. But already you can see this massive gaping hole in the walls of Gamla. And this is one of the areas in which the Romans penetrated the walls. Once inside the city of Gamla, you'll notice that it's quite large, roughly about 45 acres, but only a small percentage of that is actually excavated. But the parts that are show us what daily life would have looked like here in the city of Gamla. Settling here roughly in the 2nd century BCE, the people here lived a relatively good life, a simple life, but a good life nonetheless. Everyone had a nice home. Some people even had a second story to their house that had multiple rooms. They would be covered with stucco and decorated. And the people's daily life went something a little like this. Most people would rise with the sun. The men would come down, have something small to eat, maybe some baked bread made from barley or wheat, some olives, some figs, maybe some goat cheese before heading out to the synagogue. However, before arriving to the synagogue, they would ritually purify themselves in a bath known as a mikvah. Several of them have been discovered here in Gamla, including a beautiful one right next to the synagogue. Coming up out of the mikvah, one would be ritually pure and ready for prayer and Torah study, which the men of the community would do every morning. Coming home from synagogue, having something small to eat, seeing their wife and children who are readying the house with tea lights that was lit with olive oil that was produced here in Gamla. Beautiful olive press was found here, where you can see the grinding stone and the weights that were used in order to smush the olives to extract the oil from. The olive oil that was produced here wasn't just used in the homes, it was also traded far and wide, as Gamla is located on one of the trade routes that heads north towards the city of Damascus. After the light morning meal with their family, the men and the sons of the household would head out to the fields, which would be located just outside the city walls, on terraces where they would grow wheat, barley, grapes, olives, figs, and pomegranates. These are the 7 species here in Israel that the Torah notes as growing abundantly. The women and the children would stay closer to the house, tending to their domesticated animals like goats, sheep, chickens. They then would weave wool, grind grain, and prepare for the midday and evening meals. Once the men were finished in the fields around midday, they would return to home for another meal with the family. Again, very simple, baked breads, some dates, and again, maybe some goat cheese. It was really in the evening time that people came together for a longer, more lengthy, and definitely a more delicious meal. This one, including the breads and the salads, may include fish that would have come from the Sea of Galilee, which is located not far from here. Meat was usually only eaten on the Holy Sabbath or on holidays. After the evening meal, many of the community members would once again go to the synagogue for a communal gathering, and this could include some scripture, a class on ethics, as well as the community making decisions about what will come of the next day. At this point, people returned to their homes as the sun began to set in order to retire for the evening and repeat the process the following day. The only day that they had off, in fact, the Jews were the only people in the world who had a day off, and that would have been the Holy Sabbath. Every Friday night until Saturday night, they took a day off to sit with their families, to be with the community, and remind themselves about what life is really all about. This lasted for roughly 200 years until the mid-60s in the 1st century CE in the Common Era, when Rome began to knock on the door and wanted the land of Israel and the citizens of Judea to subjugate themselves to the Roman emperor. However, this would not do for the Jews, and the Great Revolt against Rome would begin. And the rebels elected a man by the name of Yosef ben Mattityahu to lead the forces here in the Galilee. Let's now head up the hill to the area in which the battles against the Romans raged and learn more about this rebel, Yosef ben Mattityahu, and the Great Revolt against Rome. Yosef ben Matityahu was born in the year 37 CE from a very wealthy, prominent priestly family. Now we have to understand, towards the end of the Second Temple period, the Jewish people were really divided. There were many sects of Jews at that time. However, there were four main divisions. You had the Sadducees, who were the wealthier priestly families that had become Hellenized. They were culturally Jewish, but their lifestyle was more of a Greek or later on a Roman. Then you had the Pharisees, and the Pharisees were traditional Jews grounded in their faith in God and their observance to the Torah and its commandments. There was another group known as the Essenes that were quite radical in their approach, and they abandoned Jerusalem, moved out into the desert. And then lastly, you had the Zealots, and the Zealots, all they wanted was armed resistance against Rome. Yosef ben Matityahu later in his life would write many volumes, historical documents about the Jews and Rome and the relationship between the two. He would write of himself in a very high manner, and eventually he said he became a Pharisonic Jew and would be recruited into the rebellious activities here in the north, where he would be placed as commander of the rebellion. And it was here in Gamla that he would fortify the city, realizing that this would be one of the first places that the Jews would take a mighty stand against Rome. Yosef ben Matityahu did not fight in the wars here. He was in another city taking command, known as Yotvata. There, Vespasian himself would destroy the city. Yosef ben Matityahu would later surrender to Vespasian and tell him that he had a prophetic vision that Vespasian will one day become emperor. Of course, in the Roman Empire, flattery got you everywhere, and Vespasian basically adopted Yosef ben Matityahu and changed his name from that to Josephus Flavius, Flavius being Vespasian's family name. He would eventually become a liaison between Rome and the Jews and would spend the rest of his life in Rome, where he wrote many books about the Jewish people and the wars that we fought against Rome. The Romans are coming, the Romans are coming. The sound of war could be heard by everyone. The fortifications were in place, and now all there was to sit and wait. When the Romans finally arrived, they didn't just come with legions. They also came with siege weaponry, like the one over here. It looks like a crossbow, but it was known as a ballista. And from it, they could launch cannonballs, round stones weighing anywhere from a kilo to more than 10 kilos. They relentlessly bombarded the city, destroying homes inside, knocking people out, even killing them. They breached the wall on the lower part, but the breach wasn't wide enough to allow enough Roman soldiers to usher in, and the Jews were able to repel them back. In fact, they pushed them all the way back to the top of the plateau over there. The Romans will regroup, come down here again, and now they come to the upper part of the city wall, the big tower, and they're able to remove stones from the lower section. In the middle of the night, they were undetected, and as a result, a huge part of this tower came down, breaching the walls, and the Romans would enter the city. Once the Romans were able to breach the walls and bring their army within the city, there was nothing that the people of Gamla could do. Any citizen, man, woman, or child, the Romans would just take their sword and slay them exactly where they stood. Or even worse, they would rape the women and the children and then kill them. So all the residents here, all 5,000, the additional 4,000 warriors that came here from Tiberias and other parts of the Golan and Galilee, and those that were just fleeing for safety from nearby villages, all ran here to the peak, to the head of this camel-looking ridge known as Gamla. And here they would make a fateful decision. Just imagine thousands of Israelites, Hebrews, Jewish people running to the edge of Gamla. Here, a steep ravine to the left, steep ravine to the right. Behind us, there's nowhere to run. The Roman army is approaching fast. First there's dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of Jews congregating right here. And they have to make that decision. Do we allow ourselves to be taken as slaves at best? Do we allow our women and children to be raped at worst? Or maybe the most honorable thing, the best thing to do will be jump from the side of these cliffs to our own death, and not to give Rome that glory, that satisfaction of killing us. People call Gamla the Masada of the North. That's wrong. Masada should be known as the Gamla of the South, because the battles that were fought here were fought 5 years prior to the battles that were fought at Masada. And it was here, right down here, that so many Jews chose to take their life rather than submit to the will of Rome. As Jewish people, we swore an oath to serve one and only one, and that's God above. What choice would you make? So that's the story of ancient Gamla. Now let's hike all the way back to the entrance up there where we began at the beginning of the episode to meet a special guest to talk a little bit about some of the Christian connection to Gamla.
I will bless those who bless you, God promised Abraham. Embrace this covenant by connecting with the people of Israel. From Jerusalem's stones to Galilee's shores, experience living faith through their traditions and hospitality. Your journey is more than visiting biblical sites. It's about hearts that welcome your friendship. Your presence matters. Discover Israel.
I'm Yaakov Salavan. I'm the Deputy Governor of the Golan Regional Council. I joined politics, I joined the public arena, understanding that I want to make an impact on the place I live, making life better for people that live here, people that visit here, and people that want to live here. I have the privilege of living and raising my children in both the most beautiful place in Israel and in one of the most important places to Israel strategically and historically. You know, the Golan has unbelievable heritage sites, unbelievable historical sites, both for Judaism and Christianity. This region is Israel's northern frontier. It's Israel's buffer that protects the Galilee, that protects Tel Aviv, that protects Jerusalem and Haifa. The fact that we live here gives protection to the rest of the country. So we live both in a beautiful place, but also in a place that has strategic importance to Israel's security. Gamla used to be the capital of this region when we had more than 250,000 Jews living here. Gamla for us is a symbol of courage. It's a symbol of our heritage and our connection to this land. And I can tell you that also during the current war, when we were under attack, we kept on looking at Gamla as a symbol. And I always carried with me in my wallet, and till today I still carry with me in my wallet, a replica of this coin. This is an ancient coin that was printed here, was stamped here in Gamla during the Great Revolt. It says in ancient Hebrew, for the redemption of Jerusalem the Holy. And that means that the people that lived here in the most beautiful place in Israel, as I said, did not just live here because of the great views and the great agriculture and the great wine. They lived there for a purpose. They understood they're Jerusalem's first line of defense. So Gamla for us is the symbol, and this coin is a symbol that reminds us our historical connection to this place. The Golan is very rich with ancient Jewish sites from the time of the Second Temple and the Talmudic period. And when I say Second Temple, that means it's also the times of Jesus and the rising of Christianity. So Jesus, we know, operated here and preached here in the region. And most likely he also came here to the Golan And I can tell you that today we have new researches that show that, for example, cliffs of Gadara, the miracle of the swine, happened here in the southern Golan Heights. And, you know, in Matthew 5, for instance, Jesus speaks about city on hill. Some people say it might be Jerusalem, but when you look at Gamla and the shape of the city on hill, knowing that Jesus, you know, preached right here and most likely was here in the city, then it possibly can be right here. And you can come here to the site and experience the site and experience the roots of Christianity, you know, growing here in the region, and discuss where is the city on hill, and maybe it's here. For a Christian who wants to come here, coming to Gamla is a must in order to connect to the roots and understand where Christianity comes from.
For thousands of years, empires have come and gone. Powerful rulers, massive armies have all tried to erase the Jewish people from history. And yet, here we stand in Jerusalem, in the land of Israel, alive. From the ancient prophets to the modern pioneers, the story of the Jewish people has always been one of rising up. We are going to learn about the resilience of the nation of Israel. Gamla is a place of memory, courage, and unshakable identity. Thank you for watching. Make sure to join us next time as we continue to connect you to the people, places, and land of the Bible.